This building that you can see here in this photograph is an Ipas Centre, or an International Protection Accommodation Services site located in Drogheda in Ireland. And it has come under the spotlight over the last few days after an arson attack has been recorded and documented on the building and the residents inside. Now, anyone with a right thinking brain in their head will never condone and will only condemn an attack on a property containing women and children that could have cost them their lives. So that's not under any debate. But the reporting around this attack, and let's just say the misinformation around this attack coming from the Justice Minister, Jim O'Callaghan, is bizarre to say the least. And what I mean by that is, I covered this story a few days ago when it first came out, using quotations from the Justice Minister, who claimed that fireworks had been thrown into or at this property, causing a fire, causing emergency services to be called out, causing people to be taken to hospital with potential smoke damage, or, they were injured as a result of this attack. And of course, condemning it. But it turns out that this had absolutely nothing to do with fireworks being thrown into the property, allegedly. CCTV footages came out of a mysterious man or hooded figure pouring something on the stairs of this property before setting it on fire and running away. And this has been picked up on by many people, including some of the asylum seeker groups in the area, who are calling out the Justice Minister for downplaying this attack and claiming he was misinforming the public and that he still hasn't retracted his statements. Incredible. Now, we're going to have a look at the property here, and we're going to have a look at a little video clip that has surfaced from CCTV, which doesn't seem to have been available to Jim O'Callaghan when he made a statement. And being the Justice Minister, I would have imagined he would have been fully briefed on something like this by Gardaí, and you can see one of their cars parked in the bottom left-hand corner of this photograph, and this is the property in question. You would have thought he would have been fully briefed by them, and certainly briefed by the fire authority, before he went ahead and made any statements concerning this, but it doesn't seem to be the case, which is odd. And also have a look at this photograph, and I questioned this on Friday, that 28 people apparently have been squeezed into this property as an Ipas Centre. 28 people. And I said it didn't look like there was any fire escapes on the top floors of this property, which you would have thought would have had to been in place if you were going to squeeze almost 30 people into a relatively small property. Apparently the front door was also kicked in before this attack happened. And nothing was seen until yesterday or the day before on the CCTV footage. And if you look closely at this photograph, you can see the top wheel of that, or the front wheel of that police car, about halfway up the wall in that photograph to the left-hand side. There are some white boxes there. Some people have zoomed in on those and claimed that those are CCTV cameras that would have monitored the outside of the property. So something would have been caught, you would have imagined, and certainly accessed before Jim O'Callaghan made a statement, but it wasn't. So let's have a look now at what the refugee groups or the asylum groups are saying. They're actually calling out O'Callaghan, saying he's been spreading misinformation. A still CCTV footage of Friday night's incident. And here we can see the front door, which allegedly was kicked in. Although it looks reasonably intact from this photograph, and we see a hooded figure setting fire to the stairs. Certainly doesn't look like a firework to me, as was reported by O'Callaghan. How false reports downplayed the severity of an arson attack at a Drogheda Ipas Centre. The confusion centred around fireworks getting blamed. Erroneous reports about the cause of a fire housing Ipas applicants had the effect of downplaying the severity. The movement of asylum seekers in Ireland, Masai, said the idea the fire was sparked by fireworks made it seem like it was the result of just random people. It led to genuine confusion among people, with some believing it could have been the result of children putting fireworks in letterboxes, given that it was Halloween Friday. Then we have this. This is crazy. This is the actual Justice Minister for Ireland being put on the spot for spreading misinformation by a migrant group. He released a statement saying the blaze started after fireworks were thrown into the building on Friday night at 8. That wasn't the case. Completely, completely, completely off the mark. How would he come out with a statement like that? Who briefed him on that? Who briefed him on that, if anyone? CCTV footage emerged yesterday to show the fire was started by a man who entered the building, apparently kicked the door in, before pouring petrol into the stairwell and setting it alight. Again, they're saying that it was petrol. Other places are saying it was some form of accelerant. Fireworks were thrown into the building, causing a fire, putting lives at risk, said O'Callaghan, but that's turned out to be not the case at all. Strange, isn't it? O'Callaghan further condemned the attack and said it was terrifying. But the Journal understands the minister was initially briefed on a possible fireworks element, but was told later in the day about the petrol. No correction has been issued to date by the minister. Imagine O'Callaghan puffing and blowing about the mythical far right, spreading mis and disinformation, and there he is doing it himself, and still no correction. It's now Monday. Strange. How does an investigation happen? Well, the fire brigade and fire service check and see if it was an electrical fault. Obviously, it wasn't. They ruled that out. Garda preserved the scene and conducted technical examinations. They then said there'd been initial reports of a fire caused by fireworks, which was not the case. They then said it was started deliberately, and this is going to trigger a review of all Ipas centres, all 300 plus of them. At huge expense, no doubt, to the taxpayer. Now let's have a look at the CCTV footage that has been released. And this was, again, very shaky. It wasn't taken directly from the source. Someone had almost videoed a screen showing this with a very wobbly hand. That's what's been released, but this is what's out there in the public domain. There we have it. Look at this here. The person videoing this, is he drunk? Or she drunk? Look, this is what's been released. So this is the alleged attacker or arsonist in the hallway in this Ipas center. There you see, completely hooded up, holding the door open with one of his feet. Says the door's been kicked in. Has it been kicked in, or was it accessed with a keypad? I don't know. And then we see this guy fumbling around trying to set fire to the stairs. He eventually does. Look, there it goes. Look at the wobbling of this camera. And then out he goes. The door closes over behind him. Huh? Interesting. So, the children could have died, could be seen as attempted murder charges. Suspect at least 2 men are involved. Treated as a deliberate act. Well, looks like a deliberate act to me. As you can see there from that still. Wasn't an accident. Obviously very well planned. One male with his face concealed wearing gloves kicking in the door of the property. Didn't see him kick it. Didn't see that footage. An accelerant was then poured in the stairs, set alight. It's the only access and exit point to the upper floors. Again, I have to question, how was this ever passed for fire regulations if there are 28 people living in that building, no exit upstairs? The question needs to be asked also, has this place even had a fire inspection? Has it? Or did they just ram this through to get people in there? I'm asking the question. It's strange, don't you think, that that stairwell is the only entry and exit point to the upper floors for 28 people, including women and children, babies? An adult and 4 juveniles were rescued from the upstairs. They're also probing whether the attack was pre-planned or opportunistic. Well, it wasn't opportunistic unless someone's just walking around with a bottle of or a tank of petrol kicking in a door. And it's not opportunistic. This was obviously well thought out. One source pointed out there was at least some degree of planning involved. You don't say. It must have been Sherlock Holmes came up with that. The main perpetrator made efforts to conceal his identity and wore gloves to prevent them being forensically tied to the scene, as well as bringing an accelerant there. And the thing is, how do we know who did this? Of course, the radical left, the rabid radical left, are jumping all over this, saying, oh, it must be right wing thugs. How do we know? How do we know who did it? What the motive was? There's other theories going around also that it could be something to do with the history of that property, or someone else with a beef with maybe some of the residents. Either way, I'll say it before, I'll say it again. Condemn this attack. Any attack involving setting fire to property with women and kids inside, it's heinous. But everybody's jumping to conclusions, including the Justice Minister concerning the fireworks, and it wasn't even a thing caused by fireworks. Very odd. Chief Executive of the Irish Refugee Council, Nick Henderson, said they're extremely concerned. Horrific attack. The images speak for themselves. And listen to this. Colin Brophy said a security review is needed. We think it should be extensive. There's more than 300 centres across the country, and security review looking at the safety and situation of residents is essential. Essential. Look at the top of this one. A mother of 2 from Ghana told RTE News she's now struggling to sleep due to the trauma. She was outside the building waiting for her 2 children, an 8-year-old and 12-year-old, to be rescued by the fire service. The children could have died, she said. So she was outside and they were inside. She was waiting for them to be rescued. Terrible altogether. So there you have it. And of course, this is being taken, this story's been taken and used to smear people who have questioned immigration. Nobody's questioning this attack, whether or not it was right or wrong. Nobody's questioning that if they have any sane brain in their head. But you can't equate this with people's rightly held views on the fact that Ireland maybe is above capacity. Not just maybe, but Simon Harris and Micheál Martin have both came out and said the same thing in the last week. And if the surveys are to be believed that are being published now in the national press, it's almost like there's been a complete U-turn in this issue. 80% of voters think the same thing. Not just a radical far right idea anymore, is it? Seems to be creeping into Middle Ireland. Seems to be creeping into the Dáil. Martin said 80% of people in Ireland he believed on asylum claims were chancers, leeches. That's what he said. So anyway, tell me what you think below. Will we ever get to the bottom of this? Will we ever see the culprit arrested? Or will this be another story that just drifts off into the ether and is caught up among the other dozens of stories that are coming in that make people's brains boggle? So leave me your thoughts and comments below. If you're in the Drogheda area, and some people are, and left comments in the last video about that centre, no fire escapes, history of the building, etc. Tell me what the word on the street is in the comment section below. But for now, I'm Rick Munn. This is No Risk, No Reward Media, over and out.